this article here by Bill McKibben, environmentalist, an activist and writer. And he says the question he gets asked the most is, what can I do? Right? What can I do? You know, looking and focusing on the I. And he says, yeah, you know, there's, you know, you can, you know, recycle, you know, get yourself a Prius, you know, do all these little things, but that's sort of just small stuff, you know, it's sort of just a little thing in a way. Because that's not the right question, because it's so overwhelming and so like, what can I do about the polar bears, you know, from here in Middletown, New York, you know, and there is that idea. And of course, he says the question to be asked is, what can we do to make a difference in some idea, you know, and that is part of the, as he talks about getting out there and you know, doing what you can, doing those small things, recycling, using reusable bags, doing all those things, of course, that is there. And he goes, yeah, there are times to get your voice out there, to make a change, try to change things. And he goes, yeah, every time, you know, I go to a demonstration, he says he gets emails from people going, well, how much gas did you use to drive down to the city? You know, to do that, everybody else, aren't you wasting, you know, hypocrite? You know, they go on from there. And he gets that a lot, you know, people are kayaking, you know, to protest some pollution. You know how much oil goes into the plastic in those kayaks, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And they try to, you know, there's always that pushing against, you know, and that's, I think, partly with the politics and so on, I think, that Professor Baginski will be talking about, and, you know, more of the economics of it as well. But there is also, he goes, yeah, there is that. You know, we're not trying to be monks, you know, he says, or be completely cut off, you know, but we do have to make the word out there to cut back. Sure, people are taking the bus, that's better than everyone driving. Yes, it's using fuel, but we're cutting back more and more, and this is making an impact. Then what are people doing, you know, a little bit that are around? And that's part of what I'm trying to talk about. We talk about all the horrible things a little bit. And let me mention a few things, and I'm dealing with my eyes, my cyborg partner. I won't show you my hearing aid and my eyes and everything else that's there. But let me mention a few names here. The Acorn Community, you know, Dancing Rabbit, which is neat, kind of neat, I like that name. Let's see, the Farm, Gannis, which is there as well, Health Coat, Liberty Village, Koinonia Farm, Paulville, Sunward, Yarrow, Twin Oaks, you know, that is there, Whitehawk, and so on. These are all names and references to what are referred to as intentional communities. People are familiar with intentional communities. We have some locally as well, and there are quite a few that are around. And these are, you know, groups, just to give an idea of groups of people doing things as well, just to give that a point. There's a magazine, Communities, you know, as you can see. Actually, this is a neat magazine on page 52, just to give a plug. There's an article written by a faculty member on this campus, who I happen to be married to, you know, but there is that to push that along. But it's all these groups of people coming together to form a community, to form a group with principles, you know, to guide them toward an idea of dealing with climate change, dealing with bringing communities, communications closer together, helping people out on multiple ways and levels, you know, that is so important, you know, to try to do. And, you know, thinking about it, I mean, this is North America, and I'm listing, there's a bunch, and it's all over the country. You know, Illinois, Virginia, Texas, Wisconsin, Missouri, Ohio, Florida, Michigan, and it's not just here, it's worldwide. You know, these villages, these groups are all over there. And that, you know, which immediately people go, well, it's a commune, you know, and they give that idea of you know, the 60s, 70s commune ideas, which is like, well, you know, that sort of has this negative connotation, it seems, these days, as people mock it. I guess that's why they call them intentional communities. More syllables, sounds more impressive in that sense. But it is the idea of groups coming together to work together to farm, to grow their food, to work on it economically. They will have a ideas of, oops, here we go, all my notes. As I sit here a bit, go to one in Hawaii, that would be kind of nice too. But taking a look, oops, here we go. Yeah, for instance, Dancing Rabbit, which is pretty neat, you know, mentions that everything is a commitment. How they're, how the water they use on this large parcels of land that they put together. They talk about using natural building techniques, dealing with their waste appropriately, sharing all of those ideas. And that is there. There are people out there trying this. Now, one of the things I remember as I was doing a little research on this, I keep thinking of Thoreau, who goes back as this sort of principle of environmentalism and so on. And in his writings, he says there was a young man came up to him and said, I'd live like you, but, if I could, if I had the time or the abilities and so on. And Thoreau said, and he looked at him and he goes, no. He goes, I'm not asking you to live like me. I'm asking you to find your own way. Find your own path to how to live a better, stronger, more free life. It doesn't have to be, this is what I chose, and I'm just showing you what I did. Thoreau never said you need to build a cabin and live in the woods. He goes, that's what I did.
But it would be nice.
But it would be nice. He goes, that's what I did. And he goes, yeah, you find your own path, whether it is making a garden in your front yard, whether it is, and this is Emerson coming up, if you leave the world a better place, whether it's a patch of garden, whether it's a child, whether it's a book, do something in that sense. And that's what the hope is, as we look at the communities that are put together. And I look around and I see it all around, if not just in these communities outside of Ithaca, and they're in the cities. Staten Island, Brooklyn, they have these communities as well. Some of them are geared toward different other principles, perhaps, of philosophically dealing with helping people with depression issues or other issues as well, but they're always dealing with working together to make things more sustainable. Okay, there, which is important. But also, if I, looking around, and I've been going around lately, and you go upstate, just in New York. I was up in the High Peaks this weekend. Upstate New York. Anyone know upstate very well, or from upstate New York, right? Well, upstate is great. It's beautiful this time of year, going up there. And you think about, people are stopping things. I look up and, I'm driving through and I'm seeing these wind farms, up there. You go out west toward Buffalo, there are these wind farms that are around. There are politicians talking about it, but not just Democrat, but Republicans as well, who go, sustainability, environmentalism, getting us off of foreign energy, being independent, the individual making their own way, that sounds pretty Republican, as well as Democrat. It's how it needs to be sold, as well. And it's like you see it being sold all around, and people are doing it. So what can I do? It's easy to say, no, there's nothing I can do much of. I'll just keep recycling maybe when I remember, and go from there. But no, there's a lot, and there are people everywhere doing it who are willing to talk to, help these communities. You can visit and hang out with them for a bit and find out how things work. Not saying you have to, in that. And there are many others that people will look to. And this is an old topic. It's been talked about for, talked to Thoreau, who was worried about it then, in the 19th century. I talked about, the science fiction geek, from there. You can look in the 70s, where environmentalism and Earth Day was coming out. There's tons of works by writers at the time, science fiction writers, writing about the dangers. John Brunner, writing things, The Sheep Look Up, and Stand on Zanzibar, and so on. These works that were like dealing with this is what could happen, if we keep going the way we are. And now today we have other writers in that field dealing with environmental issues all over again. Paulo Bacigalupi, who is, butchered this pronunciation of his name, but is a wonderful writer too, who's dealing with these issues and saying, look, if this goes on, and we're seeing it more and more, as Professor Bliss was pointing out. And I guess you're going to be talking about stuff. I don't want to take over your time there. Well, no?
Finish whatever wonderful quotes you have.
Oh my God, okay, whatever wonderful quotes I have. Well, I appreciate that. The communities, just to, and I wanted to, I apologize for not having more fun-filled things, but the communities you see the people working together. There's pictures, you can flip through these magazines a bit if you wish. Afterwards, if you want to get some time, and you will find them up here as well. But the point is, we could point out, and I think that's the thing that's negative, we get all this terrible stuff about climate change and the effects on health, which is horrific, the dangers that are going to happen, how we're the blame, and things are terrible, but there are things to do, and they're not major changes, not big events, that has to be done. I don't live in an eco type of village. I live in Pine Bush. It's not an eco village, in that sense. But yeah, I still have a garden. We still freeze and preserve stuff. We do what little we can and pass it on to our kids, and let others know and share. And that's part of what we can do. And then you start spreading the word a little bit more, talking to other like-minded folk, and then you can start letting those who can make bigger changes know and say, hey, wait a minute, we want this to happen because we need to, and we can make our voices heard, they often say. And that's important to make sure you're not silent. And look around and think what we can do, not just you, it's a we. We're all together in this.
I have a question for you.
No.
Okay,
No,
sorry,
go ahead, yeah.
my bad. When we look at some of the science fiction writers of the past, like a Jules Verne,
Yes.
like they could see the way the future was going, and then they could see it clearly before the rest of us, and their depiction, it turns out, it turned out to be true. So, as an expert, in science fiction, as you peruse science fiction, where do the science fiction writers see us as going? And I'm presuming that some of the reason they're writing is with ethics in mind, like this is where we could go, which is why we should act differently now.
Well,
What
yeah.
lessons are there for us?
There is always that if this goes on. And any science fiction writer will say that they don't try to predict the future at all. That what they're doing, in Ursula K. Le Guin will say, I'm not predicting any future. I'm describing the present. I'm describing the now. Just I'm putting it on another planet. I'm putting it a little bit into the future. I'm trying to describe what happens now, a little bit. And they're looking at it, and they try to be optimistic. And there's always these different approaches. Some are very optimistic and say, yeah, we can overcome any problem. Most all science fiction, which people look at as negative and depressing, usually always has some hope, always some positive light of, we can solve this problem. We can be aware of it and fix this. It may take some work, but we can do that. There is usually some innate faith in pretty much all these SF writers, which, whether they're cyberpunk authors or whether they're more current authors as well, there is something about that spirit they like to look at. I mean, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, way back when, were looking ahead, and then the way they were describing, just extrapolating a bit. The submarine, already existed when Jules Verne wrote. He just extrapolated it, made it larger and bigger, and said, look what might happen. H.G. Wells talked of nuclear war, beforehand. He saw that and saw a danger and a fear. But yeah, I would say most, although they have a sort of darker, they bring up the darker sides of things, will always point out that, yeah, there is a good possibility of things always working out better. Got to get through some dark. Asimov did that, talked of that often, but it can be done. Yeah, so it's there.
I think what you